Welcome back. My name is Adam Soroka, CEO of Cavendish. We're now on to the last session of the day, which is, I wouldn't say it's my favorite because that's a slant on the other sessions that have been going on. But I like the topic a lot on change management. I find it psychologically a very interesting theme. And it never gets boring for me. It's always interesting to see what people are talking about and how they talk about change management at scale. And I think it's really good as we sort of change viewpoints or speakers. It's just really, I find it really, really fascinating. So I'm really excited to listen to what this team of professionals have to say. It's moderated by the relentless Julie Tyne, who's Global Improvement Director for Dow. So over to you, Julie.
Hi, I am thrilled to be here today from sunny Houston, Texas. Got up early to join this panel, and I'm looking forward to welcoming the rest of the panelists on and letting them introduce themselves as well. All right, maybe we can start with just a quick around the panel. So, Krishnan, can you just let us know a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, thank you, Julie. So, my name is Krishnan. I run the digital transformation, the AI transformation end to end for SABIC, with that manufacturing, business, legal, finance, every domain. So, basically, end to end. Really excited to be here today and looking forward to engaging with my fellow panelists.
Great, thanks. Seth, can you introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. Good day, everyone. My name is Seth Taylor. I'm a digital twin product manager at Chevron, based out of the El Segundo refinery in California. Joining you today from sunny Houston, as Julie said, but spent a lot of time working through change management challenges with digital twin implementation, including in places like refineries. So excited to be here today with the other panelists and talk through this exciting topic. Thank you.
And Sean Penn?
with
We don't have
various
audio for
experiences
Sean
across
Penn.
major. Oh, hear me?
There we go. Try again.
All right. Well, I'm Champin Ko. I'm a senior architect with Dow. Uh, I've been with Dow for 17 years and 8 years before Dow across various manufacturing engineering roles. I'm architecting digital solutions for our plants for reliability, safety, and then finding new ways of working. Good to be here.
And then Samuel.
Hi, my name is Samuel Parra, and I work for BASF. I'm the North American manufacturing lead, integration leader. That means that I work for global engineering, and we're in charge of helping the plants to get new technologies in the OT space, like MES, electronic batch records, and in laying the path for the autonomous operation goal that we have.
And then finally rounding us out, Shane, can you introduce yourself?
Hello, I'm joining you from very dark and cold Oslo, so I feel a little bit out. Okay, Champagne coming from Michigan, we can maybe commiserate a little bit that we're not in sunny Houston. Yeah, Shane McCardle, CEO of Kongsberg Digital. We've been building and deploying digital twin and AI technology now for heavy asset industry for the last nearly 10 years. So very excited to be on this panel and happy to contribute.
All right. Well, I think this is a great topic. I agree with Adam, and culture change and especially when we're talking about digital is becoming just something that we're all really trying to understand how we navigate through this. So let's jump into some questions. I'm going to start with Seth. Can you tell us, Seth, what are some of the most common cultural barriers that organizations face when they're doing a large-scale digital transformation? And maybe even a tip on how leaders can proactively address those.
I'll start us off. How's that? Because it's a meaty topic for sure. So I think there's the first point I'd like to make. Certainly, aspects of a company's culture can adversely affect adoption and change management, or how change is organization. I also think it's fair to say that there are aspects of a company's culture that can facilitate and really help that. But starting with the question you asked, which is what are some of the things that can maybe pose as barriers? First of all, ownership of the change how a company chooses to structure that, whether that's coming very top down, that has a lot to do with how change is perceived, the messaging that goes with it, and really the case for why someone needs to change. I think another thing that comes to mind is how centralized or decentralized a company is can certainly have significant impact on the pace at which change happens, the ability to scale changes that you want to make, and that's something I think a lot of companies struggle with. If you are decentralized, it certainly poses some challenges. Hierarchical nature of the organization can also have an impact. So if you have very strong leaders with folks who follow their words very closely, that can help in the case when they are supportive of the change, but it can also pose as a barrier if they're the ones who are quite resistant to change. And we do see that, I'd say, in some of the more hierarchical organizations, that sometimes the mid-level management can dig their heels in and say, this isn't something that we think is important, and that trickles down to folks below them. And so that can also be a significant impediment to trying to have an impact. And then the other thing I'll say is sort of how a company chooses to incentivize or motivate users to adopt the technology, how well they make a case for change, and provide resources. That those are all I consider those part of the culture and certainly have a strong impact. I do want to highlight maybe a couple things, Julie, where I think culture can actually help. Coming from a heavy process industry, there's a very strong culture of really trying to embrace things that improve process safety, asset integrity. I come from an industry where we really, we try and work with our peers as much as we can, share best practices and standards and whatnot around, process safety and asset integrity. And so in certain spaces, I think there's cultural aspects where we're always looking for things that we can adopt quickly at scale to help things like that. And that may or may not be built into your company culture. Maybe there's a different focus depending on which industry you're in.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting, thinking about where the culture can actually bring some positive aspects to it. Maybe, Krishna, can you build on that answer a little bit? Maybe even talk a little bit about, a lot of us are in companies that are pretty highly regulated, historically maybe a bit inflexible. How does that weigh into overcoming those kind of barriers to change?
Yeah, I think as you do the change management, and it has to be very high on the agenda, you have to leverage the organization's strength, and a top-down organization, you need to have that match from the top, which gives those instructions. You need to follow something, and you need to align it with the strategy. Now, for certain, I would say, work processes within the company, you can't just change them. Right? They need a lot of, there's a process to change a process, right? It sounds rather silly, but and just because some things, okay, we can change it, doesn't work. So you have to work it with the right subject matter experts. You have to follow the process, but then you have to make it worth their while. So only if people understand the why are we doing this, is going to take us to a different level of safety, a different level of performance. Can you do that? So there's a lot of elements there that you have to make it effective. You need to look at the org chart. The mandate needs to come from the top, but that doesn't mean, as Seth pointed out, that the man or the woman at the top has all the power that everybody follows. People in the middle sometimes play interference, and then you have to do a bypass on all of that. And when you look at highly regulated industries such as ourselves, some of the AI and everything that's out there, there is no proper regulation. We are still writing the rules for all of that. So it becomes a very complicated problem. But the key thing is that people need to understand the why. There needs to be a mandate. And then you have to get the ball moving.
Yeah, that's great. I think each of our companies have, some unique company cultures and some unique challenges. I wonder, since you in your role probably have seen of different companies, can you tell us a little bit about how do you balance the need for speed and transformation, right? We're excited. We want to embrace these new technologies, but we also know that there's those natural resistance to change. So any thoughts for us on how to balance those kind of competing factors?
Sure. Can you hear me? Sorry, I heard a little breakup there. It's all clear? Yeah, very good.
Yes.
No, when we balancing that speed and you know and balancing technology with people as well, you have to look at it in multi dimensions. But I really think, and I talked about this in the past, that when we started on this digitalization journey, we had this kind of one speed operating model where it was let's deploy as quickly as possible, let's drive adoption as quickly as possible, and we expected both of those things to go hand in hand, kind of in lockstep. That's not the case. So if we take a step back, you really need to look at a two-speed operating model. One, prototype fast, get that out as quick as possible, show what's possible, show the art of possible, demonstrate capability, win hearts and minds, early on. And then when it comes to the change management, move a bit slower. I'm not saying move slow on that one. I'm saying move a bit slower because it's more complex. It's easy. Technology deployment is, that's the easy part. Getting people to adopt it at a sustained level, incorporate into their day-to-day lives, as Krishnan said, we often have this to change processes. That's just the reality we live in. And we have to be mindful of the fact that getting the technology out doesn't mean that you're going to be able to get the adoption at the exact same speed. So it's important that we maintain two-speed operating model on that front and how we balance it. There was a fantastic panel that I was able to join this morning where they talked about there's a lot of fear as well around this technology, and I know we're going to get to that as well, but a lot of fear around this technology, not just about job replacement, but fear that it's not going to work. There's a lot of fatigue around digitalization, almost a decade of digitalization in a way, and I'm sure many teams have experienced pilots, POCs, feasibility studies over those last 10 years, and it gets pushed onto the organization. They go, here we go again. Here's another thing that management are really excited about, push from the top, So really understanding, the fatigue that potentially has been there, looking at the time horizon, being very clear and transparent that this is a multi-year program. We understand, we're here to support you. Psychological safety, allowing some element of failure inside there for people to put their hands up and say, hey, we're moving fast, but certain things are breaking and we need to slow down, and not being kind of punished for raising their hand and actually highlighting something that's very important. So there's elements in there that we've seen that have worked over the last couple of years, and we advise to kind of implement the technology in that type of way. Then I would say, if we look at the involvement of the users, and this was what came up, I believe it was Michael from Linde Engineering in this morning's panel, where he said what they did was they empowered the users to dictate the speed. So they said, hey, we very transparent about what their ambitions were. They put it into people's hands. This was a agentic system rollout that they were doing. And he said, we would like for you guys and girls to start using this and tell us where it makes a lot of sense, where you have trust in using this, and demonstrate some speed, but we're leaving that up to you. And it was exponential. Initially it was quite slow, but because they gave them that ownership, because they allowed them that trust and room, suddenly they saw the take up just really explode. And that was fascinating to hear. And I think that was a very relevant point to bring back into this panel session, that allows some people, forward-leaning people, to dictate the speed of this, but within the framework of what the ambitions are being set out. So yeah, I think it's not a easy thing to address, but there's a couple of levers you can pull on.
Yeah, I really like that idea of driving the ownership, putting it in the hands of the end user. I think there's so much power there. And we have a comment that came in on the chat too about some of that, specifically around incentives. So I'd like to take it to Samuel. Samuel, what do you think builds trust with our frontline users faster? Is it transparency of communication? Is it incentives of some sort? Is it the co-creation like Shane was describing? Is it something else? What are the elements that really bring that trust of the front line along?
For me, and I have used this before, is transparency and co-creation, right? Involvement of your users, frontline workers, whoever is going to use this technology, right? Um, on the transparency side, you got to communicate. What are you going to do? What are you doing, right? What is the North Star, right? Because the problem with digitalization efforts is that it's a heavy lift, and then it might be diluted down if you have a bigger organization, right? But where are we going? Where's the North Star, right? And communicate that along the way. The other thing is co-creation, right? We need people in the early stages, in the UAT stages, I mean everywhere, so they can be part of the project. They can feel part of the project, right? So for me, those two are super important. And also, I will say that depending on the organization, the side of the organization, I always like to get a influencer, someone that can actually be really excited about the digitalization, that knows the ins and out of it, and it can be that person that can help out to propagate that excitement, that and help other people to get into what we're doing, the technology that we're implementing.
Yeah, I love the idea of the influencer, and getting them on board. Maybe Sean Penn, we talk about that a lot inside of DAO. Can you tell us a little bit about how early do we bring end users into a design and rollout conversation? How do we bring them along on that journey with us?
I definitely agree with Samuel that you got to bring them in as early as you can, co-create as much as you can, because most often we we are trying to help their them work better. They know how they work today, so you gotta partner to show them what's possible with the technology in their language, like in the things they do, whether it's like sitting side by side talking and watching, go into observe what they do in the day, and getting that up front. You understand the processes, the barriers that they may face. That helps the design of like how do you remove those barriers up front, because you can spend a lot of time designing, and then if you don't understand the barriers, uh, I like to think it's the barriers that prevent people from adopting a new capability. So when we understand those barriers, and that's when and we address them, that's when we're going to see positive change uh, as early as you can. And when you have something meaningful, you don't want to go in with a blank piece of paper. You want to go in with something that they can relate to, and then you sort of build that understanding. The trust needs to be built along the way. So I think I'm saying let's do it early.
Yeah, agree 100%. And so that idea of understanding what are the barriers and how do we address those, Seth, maybe back to you. Can you talk a little bit about maybe what are some of those barriers? One that comes to mind often is a fear of job displacement, right? AI technology is going to come and take my job. How do we address those kinds of fears that might be out there with our frontline workers?
Yeah, for sure. I think this is a really sensitive topic. I mentioned at the outset that I've been working in the digital twin space for a while, and increasingly so, digital twins being used for remote work support. And a lot of times people ask me, "Did you develop the digital twin so we could get more folks out of off the site and elsewhere, supporting our sites?" Kind of with the implication that maybe there's impact to work on site that is adverse to their roles or their the security of their jobs. And I think it's a really sensitive topic right now. I would say I don't have a magic bullet for this particular answer, but I do think there's a fine line between efficiency gains and the opportunity to displace jobs, and organizations do need to be transparent about those potential impacts. Um, my own impression is that this job displacement is likely to happen for jobs in which we don't currently have bodies and seats, right? So in other words, I see that coming in the future, but not actively happening now. the other message there is you know, companies are doing things to try and be more efficient and competitive, and if we're not able to do that, that also leads to loss of jobs, right? So it's not an easy topic, and I think transparency and leadership communication on that is really really important. I did want to maybe just circle back on some of the comments from Champin and Samuel, if that's okay, because I agree fully with their comments about co-creation and the need to do that. I also think that if you're developing something that's net new or truly transformative, that is extremely important to do. When it comes to adoption, my sense of like what builds the most trust is if you're delivering something that's making people's lives simpler or easier, you have immediate trust and credibility and gratefulness, to be honest. And that's something I think that can get built into the design phase, is making sure that you're doing something that actually delivers simplification. If it's a person who's in a complex role, or some sort of value to their everyday jobs. A lot of times technology is developed for a leadership level perhaps, but not with the end user in mind, and that co-creation process really helps ensure that what you're developing and delivering is resonating with the folks who need to adopt it, and it doesn't feel like it's a top-down incentive or initiative to, like you said, eliminate jobs, right? So if you show that the work you're doing impacts their daily lives, makes their lives simpler, I don't think there's as much maybe skepticism or cynicism about why are you doing this, right? Everyone wants to be able to work more efficiently and simpler, and hopefully that can be part of the messaging of why we're doing things.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right, jump in
Shane,
there,
looks like
Julie.
you have a thought there too.
Oh, I just want to emphasize that point that Seth made there. People get frightened, but of change. Most people do, right? And there's always that insecurity around roles, jobs, tasks, and responsibilities. But if things present themselves as making their lives easier, there's no barrier, to adopting it. They just want to adopt it. So from a technology, from our side of the world, that's our view of the world, that's on us to make sure that we develop a beautiful, enjoyable kind of product that makes it easy from an adoption point of view. But to your point as well, Seth, that you were talking about, it is a very sensitive topic around AI. And I think what we're seeing, in particular in the US with tech companies, these massive job layoffs and the rationale that's been put up is, AI is going to replace these roles. You see a lot of disruption into very structured, data-heavy industries such as financial services, kind of repeatable tasks, on low-end entry jobs. We're not as exposed to that within the heavy asset industry because our data is much more complex, our operations are much more complex, it's not as repeatable. There's a lot more regulation around it. We don't all operate the exact same way. If you think of financial services, everyone operates under CFAC and accounting rules, et cetera, et cetera. It's not exactly the same. Are we going to be disrupted? Is AI going to come in and displace roles, jobs, or tasks? 100%. But I think we have a different timeline in our industry. And we need to make sure that we use that time well. We need to look at not AI replacement, but job augmentation first. I liked what you said, I believe it was said, about being explicit. Don't shy away from it. Don't hide. Be explicit about what roles are going to be replaced, removed, or evolved. Because then if you don't do that, you're just going to fuel rumors and resistance. Be explicit, but then also set a timeline, right? Because for us, it's not going to change next year. It could be 4 years, 5 years, right? And then work with the organization against that, always being clear. But when you do that, and you tend to see efficiency gains open up, don't just put that in your pocket as an organization, use that to redesign pathways, reinvest, reskill. You'll build trust, and you'll start getting the organization with you if they see you're reinvesting into them. Yes, you need to be a more competitive organization. Maybe you don't need to add more labor. Maybe you can do a lot more with what you have or with natural attrition. But there's ways to do it, and I think right now we're facing a moral obligation to do it.
Yeah, that's I agree so much with that. We are facing an obligation to upskill, reskill, and bring people along on this change. One of my favorite things that I hear at pretty much every conference I go to is, AI won't take your job, but people who are using AI will. So thinking about that, maybe Krishnan, over to you. If you think about the workforce of 2030, what skills do they need? What skills are going to dominate the people who are successful there? And how can we as organizations start preparing our current workforce to be successful in there?
For that question, Julie. I'll try to quote Jeff, NVIDIA said we'll need a better understanding of the physical sciences. I think that's one aspect because that's the foundation of having really how things work. This is important. If you blindly go and use AI-enabled tools, you don't know as the insights make any sense. So it's to have that grounding in whatever discipline they have. And I would even add to that, people need to have some of the interpersonal skills taken to the next level. I think these days, the differences you see with a face to face interaction versus a Teams meeting where people turn off their cameras and just go do something else, the difference is enormous. So being able to work together, actually being more human, really, I think that's really going to help. Now, that's one bucket of skills. On the other hand, I would say people need to become far fluent in using some of the AI tools, understanding, I would say, the math and all those things behind it. Just as a reference point, in the early 80s, I took a course in typing, right? And then we had these keyboards. They put all the little colors on it so you could figure out where to put your fingers. And one of the questions somebody asked was, well, are you going to become a typist? And I said, no, but I think at some point these computers are going to be important and we'll need to know how to type. So typing as a profession is not what I'm interested in, but being able to use that as an interface. Similarly, now we don't have, I would say, extensive courses or skill development for things such as Word or Excel or all those kind of things, because these tools are becoming commonplace. But people need to know how to use it. So on the one hand, the bucket of skills is understanding the fundamentals of what you're doing. And for our industry, that would be the foundations, mechanical engineering, chemical engineering, all of those things, but also, I would say, the business aspects and the skills, because that's really important. And then it's about just having the ability to use these tools. So we need to look for these things in the candidates that we bring in, the beginning of the pipeline. But for people who we're talking about 2030, well, those people are already in the workforce. We need to upskill them. And we need to upskill them in such a way that they view this as an augmentation of those decades of experience they may have, and helps them become more productive and better at their job.
Yeah, I think that's great. Seeing the skills as an augmentation and not a replacement is so important. Maybe Samuel, do you have anything else that you can add to that around the types of skills and mindset shifts that we need to be able to bring our workforce to where they need to be to embrace these tools?
So I think that management needs to be aware of who's coming into the workforce, right? One thing that we're seeing right now is that people is used to um, fast technology in their personal lives, and they expect something similar in the workforce, right? So we know that now we having a young workforce coming in, right? And some other folks coming out. So there's going to be a big gap that we need to understand there, right? And they're demanding better technologies, they're demanding better user experience, user interface. So we're trying to understand them, right? So try to understand your customer, see how you can have a better appeal for their technology and what do they want. Why do I say this? Because I have had people that, for example, complains now about having to make too many clicks to get to a certain point, right? That's something that was unthinkable 5 years ago or 10 years ago, right? So don't underestimate the power of the new users that are coming into the workforce. That ultimately they're going to help you to leverage those new technologies, right? Eventually, you're going to find a balance, but embrace the newest. You're going to have people that will embrace those as well, because that's what we're used to in our personal lives. Technology is moving really, really fast, and we should do the same in the workforce.
Yeah, I love that. The technology is moving fast, and our workforces have to move along with it. Is such a great thought there. I want to pivot on this one just a little bit because maybe Sean Penn, over to you. A lot of times it can be tempting to see that technology and go adopt that technology and then ask people to come along on the journey. How do we ensure that the technology that we're choosing is that enhancement, that augmentation versus maybe the replacement or the wrong fit for the humans that are trying to use it?
There's a I go back to a saying I keep hearing. It's people, process, technology. Technology is not the first thing you pick. It's the people that you want to make sure that you understand the people. That thing still resonates with me. You can add data into the fourth mix, but you got to understand the people side of things to before. Very often we chase technology for the sake of chasing technology, but I would say you want to understand what the technology is capable of helping you with, but you want to understand what problems it's trying to solve. Maybe that problem that's trying to solve is not what you need to solve. It's not every business, not everything is created equal. Um, there's a lot of technologies out there. There's been a lot of hype out there. You want to understand because you want to, for depending on your role, like my role, I want to understand how that technology can be disruptive, or maybe it's something we want to just keep an eye out on, because you want to understand the barriers you have. I go back to the barriers again. Is it, do you have legacy technology or legacy processes that need to change first before you adopt that new technology? The technology is should be helping you with things. So I like to say start with that first. Understand the process, understand because often start with the people. The people are the ones doing the processes. Often that's what makes the tools or the data correct or make things matter. So
Yeah, I agree with that. And going back to basic Six Sigma type problem solving, right? First, start by understanding the problem we're trying to solve before we throw a solution at it. So I think that's a great way to look at it. Shane, maybe I'll ask you, on more of the solution providing side of things, how do you, what can organizations do to make sure that as they're engaging with technology solutions providers, that they are understanding that problem first and thinking about the needs of the people who are going to use that solution?
Yeah, and again, back to technology. There's all of these horizontal players, and they have all of these capability sets and everything. But when you start going vertical with some technology, you need to speak the language, right? So I mean, from a first point of view, I've said on both sides. Now I'm on the technology provider side, but there was a time where I could meet, I don't know, 10 vendors in a week, and they come in, and immediately I could start down selecting the ones that come in and talked about the technology and not about my problems or my business, right? So if I see people coming in the door doing that, I immediately take them out, right? When people come in and start talking about problems, speak my language, meet me there, already I'm going, okay, this is a company or a technology provider or a vendor or whatever that's actually going to understand my business, going to understand my regulations, going to understand my barriers or resistance to change. They are not going to come in and just go, hey, I want to do this, and then get very frustrated within 3 months and say, why aren't you moving faster? So for me, first and foremost, do you speak your language? Secondly comes the technology piece, I would say, right, when it comes to the vertical domain point of view. Back to the point, I've been doing this long enough now to understand our industry. These programs are multi-year programs. They require a level of commitment, consistency and resilience, because there's always ups and downs. Just talk to Microsoft or SAP or any of these big, or OZSoft, any of these big, let's say, enterprise providers. Inside a single customer, you can have 10 customers. Chassis can be different. Each IT landscape can be different. You need a certain amount of adaptability and flexibility and resilience. So again, making sure that whoever you're going to select has that understanding and has the ability to be able to hedge through some of these ups and downs on a long-term basis is important. And then I would start looking at the ability to actually prototype fast, grab onto new technologies, make sure it's incorporated into part of what they do. Once you have those foundations in place, and back to the point I talked about, you have your maybe factory deployment with the change management at a slower pace, ability to prototype at a much faster pace. Keep those separate if you want to be successful on your factory deployment, but also inspire and excite and keep the leadership and the kind of early adopters kind of happy about what's coming down the line. That's also vitally important to understand and be able to demonstrate that capability set. And I would say keep it simple, keep it around that. One point I would say on the adoption or on the selection, to your point, Krishnan, and I think Champagne, when we think about users and how we use and engage with this technology, so Krishnan, you said in the 80s you took a typing course because that's how we were going to interact with our jobs, through these, right? My kids, we were talking before we were led into the session here, my kids send me these little voice texts and I go, guys, call me. I don't want to have to press play and listen to a voice. I'm of that age, right? And then my daughter goes, she just turns her voice into text, right? These things are 10 little bottlenecks, right? If we are doing this, typing into, a large language model, there are 10 little bottlenecks. Voice, it's incredible how accurate it even picks up in an Irish accent or a Scottish accent, it even understands me these days, right? So it's so much power, it's so much more powerful. We need to overcome how we do this human technology interface going forward as well. And this is about rapid prototyping, etc., etc. We have users here in the North Sea of Norway, right? And it gets incredibly cold. They're out there with iPads or mobile devices, and they are wrapped up with thick gloves. It's not easy to, touch on these screens, these ATIX rated screens with all of the layers on top of them, but if they can voice into it and they can pick up and go, hey, find me this document, pick up this work order, automatically that's a benefit. And it's a completely new way. So we need to be thinking in this way as well from the adoption. I just want to circle back on that piece as well. And it's important that we move with the times. And the young people that are coming in, it's so exciting to see young people coming back to oil and gas, because for a period of time there, we were seen a little bit as the villains. But it's, we've seen a lot of young people come in. Their expectations are so high. They think we're way behind when they start, and you go, here's a folder. That's your standard operating procedure. And you go, what's this? I don't really want to work with this. I'm used to working with my phone in my day-to-day life. Why aren't we doing this in our work life? So we need to lift ourselves as an industry to the expectations of the new generation coming in as well. Yeah. Long answer as usual.
Yeah, I really like that, and I want to take it to you, Seth, and maybe you can build on that. And a thing that I think is really interesting. So as Shane was saying there, the way that we've done things in the past may not be the way to do things in the future. A typing class was essential in the 80s. Do we still need people to take typing, or do we need them to take something different? What kind of emerging technologies are you excited about that you think are going to become the most disruptive on our organizational culture or on the way that we do work?
Oh, wow. I was going to chime in really quickly first, if it's okay, Julie, and just on that last step, yeah, if you don't mind. I think we've been talking about making sure humans or the end user is included as we develop technology, and that we're not just developing technology in a vacuum and thinking about deployment of it without the needs and considerations of the end user. And I do want to put a plug in for Agile and the Agile process in this, because I think that's a really key change that's come with with a lot of the digital transformation work over the past X years, is a process that's really, embracing bite-sized change whenever possible, with end users involved in that design, right? So I've found this to be a really helpful process that really helps you to avoid some of those, some of those barriers, some of those potential aha moments that, hey, we've developed something that we think is really useful, but it doesn't quite fit, or whatever. So anyway, just wanted to put a plug in on the use of Agile, and the fact that that is a really key key thing there. And it is okay to be incremental. The example that Shane gave around um, you know pads used in the field, and someone with gloves can't use it. If the first implementation of that technology was in a place where you don't need gloves because it's not a cold environment, that's not a bad deployment, right? And now you need to invent the next solution that's going to allow you to use it in a broader set of end use applications, and that's okay. That's kind of how probably how it should work, to be honest. But yeah, if you're recommending a technology that gets used by someone who absolutely can't use it, that's a bad place to be. Sorry. Julie, I know you asked another question. Would you mind repeating it? I'm sorry.
Yeah, absolutely. So no, I think all of that builds into where we're going here, and we have a little bit of time left. I want to give everybody a chance to kind of talk about what's exciting to you as we move forward. I mean, I think Shane told us some of the small things that are shifting in the way that we interact with technology, right? Instead of typing in everything, instead of calling each other on the phone, right? It's now, text to voice, and or to text, and different small things that are changing. But are there any big things out there that you're really watching that you think are going to be that next disruption? So Seth, we'll start with you. Hopefully that question was clear enough. What's exciting you about the future in terms of what do you think is going to be disruptive in a good way?
Yeah, I guess I'm excited about the ability to um, get rid of a lot of the manual work that happens in some of the routine work that our folks do. Whether that's creating work packs to go that explain how we're supposed to go do work. I do feel like the combination of AI with a lot more enriched data to fill into some of our digital solutions provides an opportunity to really, hey, if you need to go repair this heat exchanger, or replace this piping segment, I ought to be able to, um, rapidly put together the documentation and the permitting and all the things that I need to do to go do that work. A lot of the documentation and workflow requirements, we ought to be able to automate a lot of that and let folks focus on the collaboration that needs to happen. The site assessments that need to happen, and worry less about the documentation and finding the data that need to go do that. And that's not a transformative answer, Julie, but I do feel like when you look at that, what are our folks spending a lot of their time doing that's maybe not value added? That's a really big opportunity to take some of that off their plate and enable folks to do more value added work. And it's stuff that I think is very much in our power and realm to go do now with the capabilities that are in place. So I'm excited to kind of get on that opportunity. Maybe it's shorter term answer than you were looking for, but I do think there's a large opportunity there for companies, large companies especially.
Oh, I agree fully, and it's interesting. We had a question come in through the Q&A that we sort of inadvertently answered there, because the question was around end user trust being a big barrier, and is there any action that can help with building that confidence? And I think your answer is spot on, right? Getting rid of things that people don't want to do. Let's automate the stuff that a person doesn't want to do so that they can spend more time on the things they do want to do. Definitely is going to
Right.
win some hearts and minds there. Krishnan, let's bring it back to you. Let's, a chance to weigh in on what do you think is exciting, what's coming, that's going to be disruptive, that's going to change the way that we're doing work. What are you excited about watching and following right now?
think if you look at the ingredients, I think a lot of the ingredients are already there, and we are heavy industry. We move at the pace of an oil tanker, right? No pun intended. And changing that direction takes time. But if you look at it, the generative AI, the transform models, they were actually born about a decade ago. It's only now that we're seeing that widespread adoption. And even there, we're only really at the beginning. They haven't percolated through the organization. So why am I taking that as an example? It's something that's out there. So now if you imagine or reimagine the work in every sector, we have all this data that's out there. We have, I would say, optimization of functions of manufacturing, of sales, of business, marketing, inventory management, but we're doing these independently. We are actually at the point we can put everything together and start optimizing with the AI tools the entire enterprise. That's one thing. And that also means that we can rip out the old way of doing everything and replace them by complete end-to-end AI-enabled processes, the ways we will do troubleshooting. And there are vendors out there who are making it very commonplace. They use a combination of technologies, large language models, real-time machine learning, and all of and that allows you to go back to that vision which I saw a video for several years ago. It was actually by Kongsberg about the digital twin vision, that you wake up in the morning and then the machine tells you there's a potential issue unit. These are the 5 options, and as a team of SMEs, you can look at that, and then you can even do your remote training, and then maybe go and fix the actual unit during the day. So it's changing the way you do work, but you're putting together the ingredients that we already have today. And that's the big thing. I think now what we're doing is we're looking at, well, machine learning, even though we've been doing this also for decades, and we're saying, okay, now we have ML ops, and now we have all these fancy tools. But it's when you put the tools together, just like when you look at the iPhone is innovation, and it's not innovation. It's just incremental, lots of dimensions. You put everything together, suddenly you've got something that's really great. If you look at least what I can glean from the public media, how Chevron is doing a lot of the AI in the Permian, and it's probably very similar to what SABIC's parent company is doing. It's taking all this data. You have the models, you have the large language models, you have the semantic AI, which is supposedly supposed to take all the knowledge from people, right, the tacit knowledge, and it helps you figure out where to drill and how to optimize production. So this is changing the way you work, and I think that's the whole thing, right? So it's not about having a completely blue sky idea here. No, the technology is right in front of you. Integrate it properly, make sure the pieces work, and then you'll move the needle. So it's not about getting every technology bit right the first time. It's okay to iterate, because that's invariably what will happen. And that's why you need to take an engineer's perspective, not the researcher's perspective here. Freeze, deploy, move on, and then get another piece in, and then freeze that, and then move on, deploy. You need to have that continuous deployment, so you continuously move that needle. Now, is there another technology? If I just look from a technology lens, I think quantum is coming. Now, I've been hearing it for more than 20 years, so I don't know when it's going to come. But at some point, once this is mature enough and problems lend that, I think it's going to change everything. Now, how? I have no idea. But for the conventional AI things, I have a very good idea.
Yeah, that's great. I think there are some really exciting things coming on in the future. And if we knew what they were, then they wouldn't be coming in the future. They'd already be here. So I know we're down to pretty much our last minute here with the panel. So this has been great. Maybe if I can try and summarize a few of the things that we heard. We started out talking about those common cultural barriers and how important it is to think about what those barriers are for our specific users. And I loved the conversation around putting the user in the driver's seat, letting them have some ownership, engaging them early in the process. And then we talked a little bit about skills and mindset changes, and starting with identifying the problem we're trying to solve, that very basic engineering and Six Sigma technique, making sure that we know what we're trying to solve before we bring the technology in there. And that can also help our folks. And then I love this kind of idea we ended with about we can win those the hearts and the minds of the people doing the work when we show them how it benefits them by getting rid of tasks maybe that they don't want to do. So thank you so much, Krishnan and Seth and Shan and Shane and Samuel for the great discussion. And I'll throw it back to Adam.
Thanks, Julie. I mean, it's you could go on that panel could have gone for another hour. It was really good because so many different perspectives on change management and sort of encouraging user adoption. And you sort of don't even scratch the surface, do you, when you do those panels? Because that went on for what, 45, 50 minutes. And it easily could have gone on and on. And I think it's definitely an under-talked project still, subject, I think. I still don't think... when I go to conferences and I sort of go to tech conferences or seminars or any sort of virtual or physical event, I still don't think that is probably top of the list of the things that are being talked about. It talks about sort of, data and sort of AI and everything else. But I think change management is sort of just put in there. And I think it's such an underappreciated topic still, which is absolutely bonkers. I think it's crazy because you realize when you host an event like this today, it's all about that. Actually, any technology is about change management. And I think it started from the first panel when Thomas was talking about sort of even the white collar sort of level now, the engineering level is being affected mentally about AI and technology taking their job. And it's so important psychologically to get people over that line. So it's not just about what the company does, it's psychologically what you can do to get people thinking in a different way. And I think that's what change management is ultimately. So brilliant session, Julia. Fantastic panelists on there as well, which I sort of expected as well. Many thanks to everyone joining us today. I've really enjoyed it. I think, obviously I've talked about a lot of the things throughout my sort of threads in the day, but I think, data was talked about a lot. I think AI adoption, how it's adopted, how you should be incremental, how, I like the examples. I don't know who it was. It was an example now that was given from, I think, Samuel, and he made a really good comment. He said, what we expect now in our social life, we expect in our work life. And I really like that because I heard that. I thought, that's so true because we're so on our phones and how we expect things quickly. Now, when we go to our work life, we expect the same. So it's an interesting comment that was made actually on there, which really resonated with me. But I like the fact, also the fact that there was a bit of talk about cross-industry. I like what Shay mentioned as well, about how other industries are probably more advanced. It will be a slower period of adoption, but I think the adoption is needed. And what Krishna mentioned, I think what Seth mentioned, even on that session, was, layoffs will happen. Layoffs will happen with technology, but layoffs will happen if companies are non-productive. So I think, you've got like a double-edged sword there. So I think the way in which the future of the industry is going is, yes, you need to adopt this technology, but you need to get people on this journey as well. So it's a really thought-provoking. There's so many sort of comments or statements that people made that really sort of hit home with me. But I have to just finish it and say thank you to every speaker. Thank you to all of our contributors for today as well, the advisory committee we have, and thank you to Kongsberg Digital, who are a brilliant partner as part of this event as well. We have our next event. We've got obviously our Christmas break now, but we're coming now in March to our next event for 2026. That's going to be in KL, which I'm very excited about in Asia. First Asia event that we do on digital twin and AI. So please join us then. Please give any feedback if you wish to our team regarding the event today. I've really enjoyed it. I think it's been fantastic. I hope you really have enjoyed it as well. All I can say is thank you for joining me and thank you for joining us. Thanks to the Cavendish team and see you again in 2026.